Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our committee rules have always been to submit the statements 24 hours in advance, and it's really helpful to us if we can get that, and so I'd ask you in future hearings to do that. I appreciate the fact that both the chairman and you, Secretary Carter, mentioned by name Josh Wheeler. Josh Wheeler is from Roland, Oklahoma. He's one who is certainly he was a hero before all this happened, and by his actions, he saved 70 lives of hostages and fellow members of the coalition task force, and so I appreciate very much your talking about him. Since you were here before Secretary Carter in July, ISIL still controls much of the northern and western Iraq, despite more than a year of U.S. airstrikes and the loss of Ramadi. Significant setback. Russia continued its military buildup in Syria, as we've been talking about, and began operations to support Iraq. Iran-Quds forces in Syria have been joined by Iranian support forces from Lebanon's Hezbollah to support the Assad regime, all under the command of General Soleimani, who previously directed attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq. And we talked about the change in the train and equip program, which I would like to have you elaborate a little bit more on. But in your statement that we got this morning, Secretary Carter, you said, quote, "To be clear, we are not cooperating with Russia, and we are not letting Russia impact the pace and scope of our campaign against ISIL in Iraq and Syria." Last week we had, well, some time ago we had Dr. Kissinger in as a witness, but then last week we had 5 professors that were there in one of our really good hearings that we had on, I think it's on Wednesday or Thursday. And we quoted Dr. Kissinger when he said, quote, "Syria is the latest symptom of a disintegration of the American role in stabilizing the Middle East order," unquote. Now, do you think that's inconsistent with the statements that you've made, Secretary Carter?
I think that the Middle East is certainly a very tumultuous, but once again, I come back to our role is to protect American interests in that circumstance.
Yeah, but
that's what we're doing, whether it be the fight against ISIL, our alliances and partnerships with Gulf countries, and Israel, our posture in the Gulf, all of that is intended to protect American interests in the Middle East. And is the Middle East tumultuous? You bet it is. But our anchor is the protection. Well,
when I read your statement, it seemed to me that it's not totally consistent with that. What do you think, General Dunford, about Kissinger's statement in terms of our role in that part of the world?
Mr. Senator, thanks. I mean, what I would agree with former Secretary Kissinger is that we have a critical role to play in the Middle East. We have national interests in the Middle East, and we should be decisively engaged in advancing those national interests.
Yeah, okay, but and I know this is about the Middle East, but in Ukraine is another good example of what our posture is in that part of the world. And a lot of us here were actually, well, I was there during the last election that they had in October, when for the first time in 96 years, they don't have one communist in their parliament in the Ukraine. And so Poroshenko and Yatsenyuk, and they're all, that was a pro-Western effort. And then immediately Putin started killing them all. And our response was sending blankets and K-rations. Well, they don't call them K-rations anymore. But anyway, do you agree, General Dunford, that this is the right response that we should have had to maintain what you have always perceived to be our role?
Senator, I don't want to be evasive, but I'm not sure it'd be appropriate for me to comment on an issue of policy and what we ought to do. I mean, I think my job is to provide military options to our leadership in support of the policy.
Okay, let me ask you a question, because I don't know. What is the current status at Fallujah?
Fallujah right now is being held by insurgents, and that is one of the areas that's been identified for future operations by Iraqi security forces.
Well, yeah, that's, you know what?
Comforting to know it's been identified.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Heinrich.